Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field. Going back is LoCastro. It is gone!
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, breaking the Michigan Wolverines today. Second episode of our 2025 college football preview series. I'm going to try over the next month and a half or so to hit on, the top 25 to 30 teams, I think, in college football for this upcoming season. Started out with our first episode the other day with Oklahoma. Today, we're going to the Big Ten and the Michigan Wolverines, just like the Oklahoma video, just like all the other videos that we've done over the past few years. We're going to break down the entire program pretty much. We're going to go head coach, talk down to Sherrod Moore a little bit, recap the 2024 season, and then preview the offense, the defense, and then ultimately give my schedule prediction. Got some odds from DraftKings as well. Give a little bit of a gambling talk in there, but a deep dive on the Michigan Wolverines, who are coming off a down year after winning the national title 2 years ago. Was a bit of a down year last year in the first year in Sherrod Moore, but we'll get into all that, break it all down right here, right now. So head coach Sherrod Moore, as we touched on, 9-5 overall as a head coach. One game interim back in 2023 as a head coach. Last year, his first year as the head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, was the former offensive coordinator there, really well-respected offensive line coach as well. That's going to be a strength of this team every year going forward as long as Sherrod Moore is in charge there. But he went 8-5 in his first year. A lot of pressure on him, though, this year, I think. Taking a step back last year, I think, was definitely expected from a Michigan team that, ran the table, went undefeated, won the national title, had all those draft picks, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, the list kind of went on and on. And then Jim Harbaugh ultimately leaves and becomes the Chargers head coach. Sherrod Moore steps in there, but, a lot of stuff has been going on with the program. The sign stealing, the recruiting violation, accusations out there. There's been a lot of noise, and I think that was a little bit of a distraction last year. I think it's time to, lock in now and have a big season this upcoming year. Is it national title or bust? No, I don't think so. But expectations for Michigan fans should be, let's try and compete for this Big Ten title. We're going to be competing with Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. That has to be the mindset. You can't take a step back again, and that's what I talked about in the Oklahoma video. It's like, all right, maybe, one down year every once in a while is okay, is acceptable. But for this situation, this is Michigan football. This is the Michigan Wolverines. Expectations should be year in, year out. We're competing for Big Ten and national championships. And I don't think, turning over to a new head coach should ease any of that off. Maybe, 1 year to get acclimated, but it's go time now. When we look at the 2024 season, we talked about 8-5 record last year, beat Alabama in their bowl game, 19-13. It was a very good defensive team last year. The offense really struggled. That's where things kind of went downhill. They went 5-4 in Big Ten play last year, but the offense, as I said, really struggled. They were held below 20 points in 7 games, under 30 points in 11 of their 13 games. This was not an explosive offense whatsoever last year, and the passing game was an absolute joke last year for the Michigan Wolverines. When I was looking up this stat, it floored me. It shocked me, and I had to, double check, triple check to make sure I was right. But they threw for only 129.1 yards per game last year. That was the worst in the country amongst the non-service academy teams. So schools not named Army, Navy, or Air Force, Michigan was the worst passing team in the country last year. The defense held the other teams in check, helped keep them in games. The defense was really strong. They held their opponents to below 20 points in 6 different games last year, and they were a really strong unit. If that defense wasn't there, this was a team that wasn't even going to a bowl game last year. The offense was really pedestrian. Everyone knew that they were just going to try and run. I mean, the running game wasn't even that strong last year, but the running game was constantly facing a stacked box. Alex Orji was in there, Davis Warren at quarterback, the Tuttle even. They never really seemed to be able to get it going. But this year, when you look at the offense, that narrative should change, and this offense should definitely take, a step up. It can't get much worse than it was last year, but the offense this year, they returned 7 starters on that side of the ball, and they have a major upgrade at the quarterback spot. They bring in the number 1 recruit at the quarterback spot in the entire country in Bryce Underwood. This was a whole thing. He was committed to LSU. Michigan kind of swoops in there at the last second, gives him $10+ million was the reported value of his contract, whatever we're calling it right now from NIL for Michigan, but it's assumed that he will be the day one starter, and that's an instant upgrade right away. He's going to, take some bumps and bruises, so, go through some trials and tribulations, I think, being a Big Ten quarterback as a freshman, being pressured into kind of starting right away. But I think that's the way you got to do it. Sure, it's all good to say, let's let him sit back, learn the playbook, develop behind the scenes. Like, no, Sherman Moore's got the kind of pressure on him now, especially with all the money that they just paid this kid, Bryce Underwood. The boosters, the guys that are giving the money, are going to want to see him out there. Is he going to be the day one starter? I say a 95%. They do have a couple of veterans that they brought in via the transfer portal that might give him, a run for his money, for lack of a better term. But I think Bryce Underwood has to be the starting quarterback from day one for Michigan. Let him learn, and you can kind of go into next year, I think, being like, all right, he played a full year in the Big Ten, obviously evaluate how he does. But let's, year two for Bryce Underwood is where he really takes off and makes a name for himself. He's going to have some up and downs, but I think he's got enough talent to get him on the field and be the starter for day one. But last year, as we said, the offense really struggled. It has no option but to be better this year. And they had to replace a lot last year. They had to replace their quarterback, all 5 starting linemen, their top running back, 3 of their top 4 receivers. They had to replace a lot last year. So it wasn't just the quarterback that struggled. It was a whole, and they still were able to find their way to 8-5 last year. I think that's a pretty impressive job for, the lack of talent that they had at the quarterback spot. Offensive line is experienced this year. They have an explosive play quarterback now in Bryce Underwood, and some returning pass catchers that make this, a group that I think is going to be pretty good. Not an elite group, not like they were a few years ago when they won the national title. They're not going to be like Penn State or Oregon or Ohio State. They're still going to be a team, I think, that wins with their defense and playing kind of small ball. But they're going to be able to hit some explosive plays this year. They weren't able to do that at all last year. They bring in Justice Haynes from Alabama, who's a transfer running back. He's played some really good ball in flashes. I think he's going to be a guy that gets the ball 20 times a game, get it in his hands, and he's a playmaker. Behind a strong offensive line as well, that should be the strength of that offense, with Sherman Moore coaching them up. As I said at the beginning, one of the best, regarded offensive line coaches in the entire country. They lost Colson Loveland to the draft. I believe he went to Chicago Bears at the tight end spot. That's a big blow to the passing game. But the pass catchers are a little bit more experienced than last year. They don't really have an elite go-to guy, though, on the outside. The pass catchers are definitely the weakest unit on this team. But like I said, they're going to – I think Bryce Underwood is able to make them better. But this is a situation, too, where I think they're really going to rely on the run game and be like rotating, a cast of backs. But Justice Haynes is going to be the guy there for the most part, and the kind of bell cow, but there's going to be some other guys in the mix as well for this Michigan team. But I do think the hope is that Bryce Underwood kind of elevates the play of those around him. When we switch over to the defensive side of the ball, they return 7 starters on that side of the ball as well. This unit has a dominant front 7, should be one of the best in the nation. I was listening to some podcasts the other day. I think the Michigan front 7 is the best in the nation, and they just lost Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant as well, 2 first-round picks. Mason Graham, a top 10 pick. Those guys are out, but, just like it is at Georgia, just like it is at Alabama, Ohio State, whatever, you lose 2-3 guys to the draft, you got a couple 4 stars, 5 stars kind of right behind them. So I expect the defense to be the strength of this team and a very focused running attack to pair with it on the offensive side of the ball. But they allowed 19.9 points per game last year. I think that the expectation is that they kind of stay in that same area. As I touched on, they held their opponents to 20 or less points in 6 of their games last year. That's one of the better defenses in the country, and they really carried this team. I think, though, a little less pressure on them this year than they had last year, because it was like, basically, if we're not shutting these guys down, our offense isn't going to be able to put up enough points for a shootout. I think they're going to be able to put up some more points this year. Makes it a little less pressure on the defense. When you look at a name to watch for this team on the defensive side, it's in the secondary. Arkansas transfer safety TJ Metcalf. His name has gotten some buzz to it. One of the potential best safeties here in the Big Ten, transferring from the SEC. And at linebacker, they have Ernest Hausman back. He was number 3 in tackles on the team last year. And they do have some real beef up front. 8 defensive linemen literally weighing 300 plus pounds. Nobody's going to be pushing this team around. Nobody's going to be out physicaling this team. Can they have an elite pass rusher show up, though? Like over the years, they've had an Aiden Hutchinson. Mason Graham was, an elite player on that defensive line last year. this is a really strong team. Don't have that one stud, I think, as of right now. Could somebody develop over the course of this year? Yes, for sure. But, to be winning these big time games, you have to have a guy that you can say, go get the quarterback on a key third down. And I don't know if this Michigan defense has that right now. That's going to be something to watch. That will kind of determine the ceiling of this Michigan defense in my eyes. But no doubt about it, this is the stronger unit of the offense and the defense. You have to definitely give it to the defense there. All right, let's get into the schedule, break down the schedule here for the Michigan Wolverines. When you look at the schedule, the over-under is 8.5 over at DraftKings, juice to the over at -160. Under 8.5 wins is +135. They are 25-1 to win the national championship, +200 to make the playoff, and +850 to win the Big Ten. So let's go through their schedule game by game. Open up with New Mexico. You're gonna give them a win there at the Big House, obviously, in that one. Big time week 2 matchup between two programs that have a lot of pressure on them, I think, this year. And this was the team we did in our first episode. They'd go to Oklahoma. I think that's going to be a good one. Good test for Bryce Underwood right away. But I think that's going to be an L. I like Oklahoma this year. I only have them going 7-5, but that's mainly due to the loaded SEC schedule that they have. So 1-1 after 2 games, and then they host Central Michigan, give them a win there. Go to Nebraska. I think Nebraska and Michigan are really going to be kind of in the same ballpark this year. Expectations, a lot of pressure, I think, on Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola. I think we could see a lot of Michigan looking like what Nebraska looked like last year. Basically, they put Raiola out there from day one, and he had some ups and downs, but this is the year where I think he takes a leap. I like Nebraska to win that game there. They host Wisconsin. I'll give them a W in that one. They go to USC. That's going to be a tough game. Are they able to out-physical the Trojans this year? If they are, and USC still kind of a little bit finesse with their boy Lincoln Riley over there, Michigan could win that game, but traveling on the road, I think I like USC to take a step up this year from last year. I'm going to give Michigan a loss there as well. So through 5 games, we have them sitting at 3-2. They host Washington. I like Washington. I think that they're going to be a good squad, but going to the Big House is not an easy task. So I'm going to give the Wolverines a win there. They move to, what is that after? 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3, 4-3. This is where the schedule gets really easy, though, and I think you can make a pretty good argument that, this is where Bryce Underwood could really find his stride and set them up for going into the Ohio State game to potentially win that game again. They go to Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State's going to be great. I'm giving them a W there. They host Purdue, give them a W there. At Northwestern, give them a W there, and at Maryland, give them a W there. Arguably the 4 worst teams potentially in the Big Ten this year. You get them all in a row, kind of like a tune-up for the Ohio State game. So I have them going into the Ohio State game. I have them going, what would that be? 8-3 going into the Ohio State game. Can they get to 9? If they get to 9 wins there, are they in the mix for the playoff? I don't think the schedule is too weak. Looking at the schedule, other than Ohio State, I don't know if any of these teams are going to be ranked. Or Oklahoma potentially could be. I don't think Nebraska will be ranked. USC maybe. But outside of that, they have one guaranteed ranked team on their schedule to start the year. So they have a very doable schedule. But I do think this is the year that Ohio State gets back in the win column against Michigan. That's a big focus. Going to the Big House, too, and being able to do it would be, a bit of a surprise. But I do like Ohio State to be a better team than Michigan this year. And I think the losing streak has to end at some point for the Buckeyes. So I have Ohio State in the final game of the season going to Michigan and knocking them off. And that would put Michigan at an 8-4 record in my eyes, in my prediction. That would be to the under, which is plus 135 at under 8.5 wins. But, I'm right there with Vegas, where I think they could win 9 games potentially. But, let's see what Bryce Underwood looks like and if that offense can take a step. But with those 4 games heading into Ohio State, I think they could be riding a 4-game win streak there. I think the floor for this team is 7 wins, but depending how good Underwood is, I think this team is a team that could win 9 or 10 games. But I'm going to have them going 8-4 for my official projection. But that'll do it for the Michigan Wolverines. Next episode, we're going to head over to the ACC. Going to break down Clemson, a program that I've been out on the past few years. They made me bite my words at the end of the season last year. And we're playing some really, really damn good football. And I think they're going to be a damn good team this year and have a huge week 1 test against LSU, 2 teams that, both have national title expectations. So we'll be switching over to the ACC next. we'll probably do a Big 12, and we'll kind of like circulate that way and hit on some of these top teams. My Big 12 team, I'm going to do Texas Tech first, a team that's been getting a lot of buzz this whole season. But that'll do it for the Michigan Wolverines. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in here to Pick Swap Media and Beef Up Front. Thanks a bunch. We will talk to you guys soon.